Ever imagine, like, stepping onto a spaceship and just blasting off to, say, Mars? Sounds like pure science fiction, right?
Well, it might be closer than you think.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. Our deep dive today is all about SpaceX's latest win. They actually caught their super heavy booster rocket after launching Starship, and we're going to unpack why this is such a huge deal for, well, for everyone who's ever dreamed of space travel.
Imagine a future where space travel isn't this crazy expensive thing, where sending scientific research up there is like normal,
Yeah.
and where space tourism isn't just for billionaires. That's the future SpaceX is building towards.
Okay, sign me up for that future. I've always been fascinated by space ever since I was a kid with my head stuck in astronomy books. But let's back up a bit. For those of us who didn't go to rocket science school, what makes this catch so groundbreaking?
It all comes down to one word:
Yeah.
reusability. See, up until recently, launching something into space meant building an entirely new rocket every single time.
Wait, really?
Yeah,
So it's like, what, throwing away a jumbo jet after just one flight? That's insane and incredibly wasteful, not to mention expensive.
you got it. And that's why reusability changes the whole game. By designing rockets that can not only launch something into space, but then safely return to Earth, SpaceX is making space travel way, way cheaper.
Okay, that makes sense. But how is catching this, what was it called, super heavy booster, different from what they've already been doing with the Falcon 9 rockets? They've landed those before, right?
Yeah, they have, but this is a whole other ball game. Think of it like this. Landing a Falcon 9 on a drone ship at sea, that's like parking a car. Catching super heavy with these huge arms on the launch tower. They call them Mechazilla, by the way.
Mechazilla, seriously, only SpaceX.
Right, but yeah, catching this behemoth, it's like threading a needle with that car while it's still moving at like 100 miles an hour.
You're kidding. Mechazilla have to catch this thing.
It does.
That sounds ridiculously hard. What did that Engadget article say about it?
Well, the precision involved is mind-blowing, to say the least. I mean, imagine this. Super Heavy is about 230 feet tall.
230 feet, so like a 20-story building.
Yeah, give or take. And it weighs over 7 million pounds fully fueled. And the tower's chopstick arms. They have to guide this monster back to the launch pad, compensating for wind gusts, the rocket's own movements, all of it.
So it's like trying to catch a skyscraper falling out of the sky. I'm getting nervous just thinking about it. That Engadget article, they said something about those arms having to move independently, like with crazy accuracy to grab the booster.
Oh yeah, it's no joke. They were saying the capture range, as SpaceX calls it, is just a couple of feet.
A couple of feet, that's like tighter than most parking spaces.
And we're talking about a vehicle moving at supersonic speeds here.
This is blowing my mind. No wonder they call it rocket science. But hold on, you mentioned earlier this is only half the equation, right?
Right.
What about Starship itself? Where does that fit in?
Right, right. It's easy to get caught up in this whole super heavy catch, but Starship is just as important. That's the upper stage, the one
Yeah.
that actually carries the crew and cargo all the way to orbit and beyond.
Ah, okay. So super heavy is the muscle getting it off the ground, and then Starship is like the sleek spaceship taking it from there, kind of like on that hour-long test flight they mentioned.
Exactly. It's a two-stage system, a bit like a relay race. Super Heavy takes the baton first, blasts off, gets Starship up to a certain altitude, then comes back for its grand landing, while Starship takes it from there.
Okay, that makes sense. This is some seriously innovative stuff. But how does this successful catch, I mean, this whole reusability thing actually translate to that future we were talking about earlier, the one with space tourism and like Mars colonies?
Well, that's the really exciting part, isn't it? See, by making these rockets reusable, SpaceX isn't just making space travel more efficient, they're totally changing the economics of it.
Yeah.
Imagine if, say, every time you wanted to fly across the Atlantic, they had to build a brand new plane.
Oh man, the ticket prices would be through the roof.
Exactly. But with reusable rockets, space travel becomes significantly cheaper, which opens up all kinds of possibilities.
Okay, yeah, I get it. Cheaper space travel, that's huge. But what kind of changes are we talking about here? What's going to be different, say, in the next decade?
Well, one area that's going to see a massive shift is scientific research. Think about it. Cheaper launches mean scientists can do way more. Send more experiments to the space station, launch new telescopes to study the universe, maybe even do research directly on the moon or Mars.
Wow, that's incredible. Like, it's going to change how we understand the universe. But what about my space travel dreams? Am I going to be able to, book a weekend trip to orbit anytime soon?
Uh-huh. Well, maybe not a weekend trip just yet. But as this technology keeps getting better, we're definitely going to see a boom in space tourism. Instead of a cruise to the Caribbean, You could be heading to a space hotel, floating in zero gravity, looking down at Earth.
Man, that would be something else. I've always been fascinated by that, what do they call it? The overview effect, the thing astronauts talk about.
Yeah.
That shift in perspective when they see Earth from space.
It's a powerful thing for sure. And who knows? Maybe as space travel becomes more common, more people having that experience, it could change how we see ourselves, how we see the planet.
Wow. This whole catch, it's sounding less like a tech thing and more like I don't know, a turning point for humanity.
It might just be.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the big one, the really ambitious goal, getting humans to Mars, and maybe even living there one day. This reusable system. That makes it so much easier to even think about sending people and all the supplies they'll need back and forth.
Man, we're talking about changing the course of history here, but we've got to remember this didn't just happen overnight. SpaceX has had a lot of explosions along the way, right? They didn't just nail this on the first try.
Oh, absolutely not. Innovation like this, it's messy. It takes a lot of trial and error.
Right.
SpaceX, they've had some spectacular failures, but the important thing is they learned from them, came back stronger, kept pushing the limits. Remember those early Falcon 9 landings?
Oh, yeah, some of those were rough to watch.
But if they hadn't kept at it, kept learning from those, well, who knows where we'd be.
It's kind of inspiring, actually. Makes you think, what's next for them now that they've, literally stuck the landing? What's the next challenge?
Well, they're not slowing down anytime soon, that's for sure. They're already refining this whole reusable system, making it even more reliable, even cheaper. And they're still working on Starship, aiming for those crewed missions to the moon, Mars, you name it.
So the journey's just beginning. It's exciting to think about what they might accomplish next.
It really is. And that's what makes this such a huge moment. SpaceX is showing us that what seems impossible, well, maybe it's not so impossible after all. Maybe the sky isn't the limit when there are footprints on the moon.
Now that is a thought. Well, that's our deep dive into the world of SpaceX, reusable rockets, and the future of space travel. If you're anything like me, you're about to go watch that launch footage again, this time with a whole new appreciation for what we just witnessed. Thanks for joining us.